So I just wanted to say that today's episode is sponsored by ASEA redox signaling molecules. Now, it comes in two forms, the liquid and the gel, plus there's a huge other product range for us. But why did I start taking ASEA, and why is it now an integral part of something that my whole family, both four-legged and two-legged, take every single day? Plus also something that all the clients I work with, again, four-legged and two-legged, it's number one on my priority list. Well, part of what I do, what I'm passionate about, is understanding the challenges that are affecting each and every one of us in today's modern living. The more you know, the more sometimes you wish you didn't know, but the pollution in the air, in the water, in the food, the control of our minds, the propaganda. But one of the things that we can do is take back responsibility for our own health. Now, every single cell of our body, whether we're an animal, whether we're one of the dogs in the backgrounds or one of my plants, contain these redox signaling molecules, and cellular health and cellular communication is absolutely key, whether you want to get your body back in balance, whether you want to reverse the aging process, whether you want to address any particular challenges that you've got physically, emotionally. It all starts with healthy cells. If your liver cells are healthy, your liver's healthy. If your brain cells are healthy, your brain's healthy. But just like a mobile phone, most of us have got mobile phones that we use on a routine basis now, but that mobile phone, regardless of whether you've got the latest model, is completely useless without a signal. So what does this technology do? The gel is something that you can apply topically over particular areas of concern, whether you want your skin to look better, whether you've got a cellulite, whether you've got an area that's causing you a challenge. The liquid is something you drink each and every day to top up what should be in your cells anyway. But when our bodies are stressed, diseased, challenged, or as we age, we make less of them. So personally, I wouldn't be without it. My sleep's better, my energy levels are better, my mood's better, my mobility's better. If you want to find out more, the details are below. But I'm so grateful that this came into my life, and I'm so grateful I can share it with others. I hope you love it as much as I do. Let me know. Hello, everyone. We are here for our coffee chat today with the lovely Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta. And Bryce, we've been talking a lot about this off camera because we are going to talk about us, as in humanity, being the slowly boiling frog today in so many different ways, because we've been all talking about this in loads of different ways, but I sent you an interview by Tucker Carlson, and I don't know what made me listen to this one. It was interesting. Obviously, I've been listening to his interviews with Putin. And this, if anyone wants to go on Tucker Carlson's YouTube, it's called What I Learned from Surviving a Plane Crash. I'll put the link below. I would encourage everyone to go and listen to it because it's such an important video, isn't it, Bryce? What really struck you when you were listening to this?
I freaking loved it, and it's only like 10 minutes, so it's
Yeah.
very digestible. And I thought what he was saying was, and he has such a way with words. Obviously, this is what he's done his whole life, so he has a really great way of explaining things, and he uses his own life as an example of how we process shock and how to accept what's really going on in the world. And I don't know where you want to start with this, Catherine, because it was such a great little speech he gave. Like, I don't know where you want to start with it
Well,
because
I've
it
made loads of notes so I don't forget because my little school book, but I love, like you, we've talked about the, before we get into it, before we get into this subject, both Bright and I published yesterday on our other channels, beginning with R, a really, really important interview with Kathy, someone, you all know who it is, go and have a look, about mind control MK Ultra. But this ties in so closely to what we're talking about today. So what I wanted to ask you about it first, and we both picked up the same thing, is about one of the things that happened. Go listen to the video, everyone. But in a nutshell, just to sum it up, 20 years ago, Tucker Carlson was in Pakistan after 9/11, and he was in a plane crash, and everyone on the whole plane thought they were going to die. It was really awful. It ended up crashing in the sand dunes in Dubai, and they survived. miraculously. But what happened when the plane went down is one of the flight attendants, you know, and the wing was on the floor, the wing had dropped off, you know, they'd just crashed, the pilots had legged it out the front windows. And when Tucker and some of the other Westerners in the front seat got up to try and activate the emergency door to get out, one of the flight attendants came up to him, bless him, and said, sit down, everything is fine, everything is fine. I can't do the accent or I'll get chucked off because you're not allowed to do that these days.
Yeah.
But what Tucker said so potently, and you and I both picked up on this as the first thing, is he said the flight attendant just couldn't metabolize the change, the shock. And then he goes on to explain loads of other examples. So I wanted to ask you first, because that hit us so like punch in the heart, that one. How's this applying to what we're all going through now?
Well, I mean, and I'm not a therapist, so this is just my layman's perspective. It goes into the freeze response. So
Yeah.
whenever you're dealing with trauma. So there's stress, there's everyday stress that we all go through, and then there's trauma. And trauma can be many different things, but a lot of times trauma is unexpected change. And sometimes that unexpected change can be good change too. Don't misunderstand. Sometimes that can cause anxiety as well, good change. But when a plane crashes, that is a traumatic event, like a car crash. And that made me laugh because the pilot and the co-pilot ran. The minute
Yep.
the plane went down, they jumped out the window and ran. So they had registered. They had the flight, right? The fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So they ran. And Tucker Carlson stood up with the other Westerners stood up and were going to evacuate the plane as well. One of the wings was on fire. And what we see with the flight attendant was, in my opinion, a freeze response. It's fine. It's okay. Sit back down. It's fine. That disassociation of what has actually just happened because the mind in that moment can't quite process, or I loved how we use the word metabolize,
Yeah.
can't quite metabolize that you literally it is by the grace of God that you're still alive right now.
Yeah.
And in Tucker Carlson in that moment with a few other Westerners, he said made the decision to just run, to leave. They left the plane. But he said there were people in the back that just stayed seated. So they were in this kind of freeze response as well. Like, no, it's fine. It's like that Friends meme from Friends, show Friends, when Ross's life was falling apart, he kept going, it's fine, I'm fine. You know, that freeze response. And it's so poetic and a metaphor of what we're seeing. And that was the point of his conversation, right? Of what we're seeing happening in our world today.
Yeah, and the reason why I call this the slow burning boiling frog is because what's happening, in my opinion, and again, I'm not a therapist either, but we're seeing everyone talking about these things, and we'll come on to another example that Tucker talked about, which was perfect for this scenario, but we're still staying in the pot. And what I mean about that, there's a huge difference between understanding that this is going on, understanding what the plan is, but not actually doing anything about it, sitting there listening to everyone else talking about it, listening to everyone telling you it's going to be okay, there's a solar flash coming, my whatever divination I'm going to use tells me it's going to be okay, the white hats are in control. And then we're still seeing all these atrocities play out all over the world, and we're still sitting in that boiling pot. And at what stage are we going to get out of the pot and literally say, no, I'm off, I'm
I'm
doing
out.
something
We're
different,
still
I'm
sitting in the
taking.
back of the plane. We're sitting in the back of the plane.
Absolutely. And one of the other examples that Tucker used, which is very relevant, and you've been discussing this on your channel for a while, and we've had lots of talks about it, is the Bolshevik revolution in Russia, and about how what happened when there's this brilliant book, I'm just trying to find his name, Peter Wrangel, who was a German war officer working for the Tsar, came back to Russia after the Civil Revolution and couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was seeing attacks on women in the street. He was seeing complete breakdown of any civility, of any police control, of any order, law and order. And yet he then walked into a movie theatre and all the middle class were sitting there completely engrossed in a movie as if nothing was going on. And then he went to see the Tsar and his family, and we all know what happened to them, who were actually had red ribbons on and was actually supporting the Bolsheviks, which ended up killing them.
Yeah.
And he makes a comparison of the Black Lives Matter and what's happening there. And I've heard so many interviews, Bryce, on YouTube and X and other things where we're looking, Kathy, whose name we can't mention, in our interview, if you listen to that, she's talking about the whole sexualization of children, the gender issues. This all fits into the same thing. At what stage, when we've got no say in what happens to our children anymore, where we can only eat false genetically made or 3D printed food? And I saw a video the other day, which is actually fact, where they've already started inoculating salads and things like that with vaccines. You know, at what stage do we realize that we can't reproduce as a race anymore? We can't go outside our 15-minute cities. We can't just keep talking about it, can we?
Yeah, it's actually I'm actually starting to shake
Yeah.
as you talk about this because my nervous system is kicking in. Yeah, it's something I feel like you and I've been and we were talking off camera like we're trying to figure out what the solution is. Like we're not saying we're any better than anybody else, but we've been screaming this for a couple of years now. You know, we look around. I mean, I in this situation am fortunate because I do live in a city. So I think when you live in a city, you see it more aggressively than
Yes.
maybe in a smaller town. I'm seeing the level of homeless people rise. I'm seeing right in my face, you know, the gas is through the roof expensive and Atlanta is a driving city. We don't we have an underground system, but it's not like London or New
Mm.
York. We're very much a driving city. So it's a necessity for people to have a car here. You know, we're seeing these I was at the grocery store yesterday and a loaf of bread was $10. $10 for a loaf of bread. $10 if
Wow.
you're lucky to find a loaf of bread, because sometimes the shelves are empty. So we're seeing these things happen in front of our eyes, but yet we're being told it's fine. The white hats are in charge. It's fine. It's a movie. It's fine. But it's not fine. What about the person that just went homeless? Are you going to tell him it's just a movie? It's fine? You know, are we sitting in that movie theater with that ticket, literally watching the movie while the world around us is falling apart? And it's like with the Romanovs wearing the ribbons. Well, that's our Instagram today. That's the black squares on Instagrams. That's the you know, and it's not just the normies. It's also in the quote unquote truther world too, where we're being distracted, and it's just so important. Are we sitting on the back of the plane, or are we actually leaving the plane? Are we actually like are we being fooled, continually being fooled that everything is fine and we can't we ourselves, just as Tucker Carlson said, can't metabolize, can't integrate, can't accept the fact that the world around us is falling apart, that it's not, you know, my childhood is gone, Catherine's child, your childhood is gone, the peace we had in our childhoods of a normal society, that's not coming back.
No,
It's not
not
coming back.
unless we make drastic changes. And you've made some such important points there, Bryce. And I see it all the time. So when we're saying this, I really want to reiterate what you've just said, Bryce. We were talking off camera. We are not pretending by any stretch we've got this sorted. No, 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 we haven't. We're saying together as a community, let's try and do more and take more action. So, classic example, you and I are very into health. Why? Because if I need to survive without this, I need to be physically able to dig
Yeah.
a garden. I need to be physically able to walk miles. I need to be able to go out and forage. I'm not being over dramatic here. It's like my friend Timo when we were saying most humans, Matt and I from Cultivate Elevate were talking about this. Please go and watch that video. Non-toxic dad, we talked about this. If as a human you can't, yeah.
So I'm gonna shut the door quickly. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I'll carry on talking. If as a human you can't climb a tree, if you can't walk a reasonable distance to get away, if you can't dig a garden, even if it's not your garden, we've been deliberately made to accept complete weakness as a human race. We really have. I'm 56. I've really messed up my knee at the moment, which is completely my fault because I did it a year ago and I just kept, because I've got all my tools. Been managing it for a year, but now I've decided I need to do something about it and up my remedies because even before I watched the Tucker interview, this was in the back of my mind. I need to keep myself at peak fitness, and we're so dependent on the pharmaceutical industry now. I have really knowledgeable people, it happened today, not pointing out any names to people. This isn't blame. This is what we've all been brainwashed into, that said, oh, I tried this for 30 days and it didn't make any difference. It's like we're so in, you can't get fit in 30 days. You can't change your diet completely in 30 days. You can't, this is why like my diet course is 8 weeks, because that's the amount of time it takes for your microbiome to rebalance and for you to integrate the changes. This is why you have your shadow works for the length you do, Bryce, because you can't, the body needs time, the mind needs time, the soul needs time to integrate the changes you're making. And this is where I think the evil geniuses, and I'm not using genius as a compliment, have been so clever, because they have put us in the slow boiling pot, and they've talked us through beautifully about how, you know, we have to use pronouns now, and we have to use this, and you're allowed to choose your sex, and the parents can't say what the sex of the baby is, and all these little gradual dripping things that are done for equality and give people freedom of choice. But what it's actually doing is taking all our freedom and all our choice away from us. Because as a human species, if you can't even breed, game over.
Right. If you can't even save yourself physically, and that's, as you're saying this, Catherine, like there's these great Instagram feeds that I've found recently. You know, in the new year, everybody has these new year resolutions, going to the gym, losing weight, whatever. And there's this trend of people, especially I'm seeing it mainly with the Americans, like, I'm now training, I'm now running, I'm now going to the gym. It's not for me looking good in a bathing suit, it's so that I can withstand the
Yeah.
battle that's coming with the order, the you know, the new one that's coming, so I can actually physically withstand. And we see this, you know, everybody knows I love the Cassiopeians, and they talk about this a lot, that, you know, they are going to be, from according to what they say, they're going to be releasing new viruses. They're going to be trying to do everything they can to weaken us. And the one thing that you have in your power to fight against that and to save yourself is your health.
Yeah.
And so that's a great, you know, we do, and Helen, that is it's so true, because you know, I remember somebody saying once, like, if you're in a 30, let's say, let's make it like, let's say you date a guy for a year. You're dating, you're in this relationship with this guy for a year, and you're in love with this guy, and then you break up. Well, it's going to take about half the time to totally recover, like 6 months to get yourself back. So if we look at that emotionally from something very small like that, if we've gone a lifetime of eating really bad foods, of not really prioritizing our health, of not prioritizing our just basic fundamental needs as a human being, that's not going to be course corrected in a week.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to course correct and to create these new patterns within your own physical body. You know, if you want to run a marathon, you're not going to be able, bless your heart, if you try to train for that marathon in 1 month, because
Mm.
it's going to kill you. You know, like, you're going to have to take time to really allow the endurance. And they have condition. I think a while ago, at least in my childhood, people knew this. People knew that it took time, but not
Absolutely.
anymore.
And in an emergency situation, you absolutely can do quick hit
Mhm.
fixes, but there's a cost of it. There's a
Yeah.
cost. The longer we've been, you know, I did an interview with Warren Phillips, Non-Toxic Dad. Watch it. He's bringing out a documentary about how to get all the toxins out of our food, out of our homes. So important, because we're bombarded from every direction. But the beauty is just as quick as they're bombarding us, people are coming up with solutions. But you need to be thinking clearly. You need to be able to be thinking clearly, because those people on the back of the planes, we've seen it. I've seen this in my own life so many times, where we had an awful thing called the Grenfell Tower fire a few years ago in the UK, where it was a huge, great tower block went up in flames, and the emergency services told everyone to stay in their flats and wait to help. And the ones that ignored it mainly got out, and the ones that listened to the advice all died. It was horrendous. I mean, I've just got goosebumps. This whole
Oh God, yes.
conversation is not to scare people. It's to say we can make different choices. Listen to the Kathy interview, what she's been through and the wisdom she shares about how you have to, each time a trauma hits you, she has to still, after all the work she's done, and we have to, after all the work all of us collectively have done, we have to realize they're coming for us again. We've got to be stronger than before. We've got to up our game above before. We've got to have different contacts in our lives. You know, we don't all have to do this ourselves. Not everyone has to have their own garden, but you need to
Right.
know someone who has. Not
Yep.
everyone, even if it's the car. you know, you might need to share and share resources. Someone might need to get a generator and someone might need to have the car and you share. There's all these different things, but I don't know how to articulate it, Bryce, but we are being slowly boiled as humanity. Can I just say, I know I'm talking far too much today. I'm sorry. But
Well,
I
yeah.
want your opinion on this, Bryce. Look at how we've been desensitized as a human race with the animal abuse. And I'm not talking about the satanic animal abuse. I'm talking about just our food chains. There's a huge difference to, regardless of what we believe in our history and where everything is, there's a huge difference in how people living in balance with nature hunt and forage and survive and how we do. So it's been so normalized now to abuse factory farming animals in horrific ways to give us toxic, stressed, full of adrenaline food. And that's all part of the boiling us in the pot, because if you accept that, then it's not much to accept the next step up, is it?
No, it's not. It goes back to everything. That's such a good analogy too. Like, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about conversations that my boyfriend and I have had, like very serious conversations about what we do when disaster strikes, and
Yeah.
how we had to have that serious conversation about, if we have to go out on foot, we can't carry much stuff with us, and making sure that we've got Rob, our dog, sorted, because obviously he's coming with us. And I was we've been so desensitized to everything, especially accepting bad behavior, accepting cruelty, but we've also been so disconnected from nature in general. And I don't know about you, Catherine, but when I was a little girl, not that, I mean, I, for some people watching, I might seem old. I'm actually not that old. This wasn't that long ago, historically speaking, right? We were taught when we were like in elementary school, beneath the age of 10, we were taught that if we got lost in the woods, we look for the North Star.
Yeah.
Do kids today even know what the North Star is?
No.
And this is important information, because if like, in the United States last week, we had this huge kerfuffle. Actually, it was a week ago today, with AT&T, which is
Yeah.
one of the biggest service providers in the United States. I could only text. Our internet went out. Like, I had to reschedule everything. I'm still playing catch up this week. And so many people are kind of freaking out about it. Well, here's the thing, my friends. Think about it this way. If we get attacked, all right, I'll talk to the Americans. If you live where I live, around the Appalachian Mountains, and we get attacked, you're not going to bring your cell phone with you
Mm.
when you run, because that thing is a tracking device too. Do you feel confident that you could go into the Appalachian Mountains? I know I joke about it with like the feral people, but do you, and in all seriousness, do you feel confident within yourself that you would be able to maneuver without a GPS system? Do you still, that's another thing, Catherine, like, kids today don't know how to read maps. I know how to read a
Well,
map.
I know. I just want to say about that, as you were thinking at it, Bryce, that's so important what you've just said there, because I am notorious. If you put me in a car or a city, I will get lost. I am the only person that got my poor mother completely lost in New York. Everyone says you can't get lost, it's a grid system. Well, I can. But I can find my way around the woods. However, I will say my son has been born, he can navigate, he can read a map like anything. He can navigate right from a small child. He knew what berries he could forage and what he couldn't, and leaves and things like this. And there's in the UK, there's a bit of a, I don't know if it's the same where you are, Bryce, bit of a revival about learning about foraging again and bush skills and everything. And it's so important. It's probably the most important thing we can send our children to do and make sure we do ourselves, because this isn't fear mongering at all. This is basic, look at what's going on. How many of us are sitting in that movie theaters? It will really make sense to you if you listen to the Tucker video. 10 minutes of your time, we'll put the link below. So worth it, because it really made me think, and we've had conversations about this offline. It really made us both think, I'm going to be making some changes to my work schedule. I'm going to be making some changes, because you will be seeing me on here a lot less. I will be less available for appointments, because now I'm not going to be spending my time on something that isn't very, very valuable, unfortunately, because I'm realizing, I've got my animals to look after, I've got my family to look after, I've got myself to look after, and I've realized I haven't done it as well as I could have. And it's time to reprioritize now before things get any worse, because food takes time to grow. It
Yeah,
takes
and
time
that's
to
one thing
dry, to preserve.
we were talking about that off camera. I was saying I feel very fortunate in the fact that my boyfriend does know how to do he absolutely knows how to survive. He knows how to forage, he knows how to garden, he knows everything. And we live in a city, so we can't have a garden, but we have family that does have land in a garden. And so we know, and I know that if we had to, well, and first of all, I'm also someone who is willing to go without the same amount of food I normally go without. Now, if you've
Yeah.
heard my health talks, you know that that's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do, but in a survival situation, I am prepared to know that your adrenaline's going to be pumping anyway, so it's not going to be like, a normal day sitting at home just bored and snacking. Right? I know that I can do that. I know with everything I've been through in my life with my physical body anyway, I know that I'm stronger than I think I am. And I know, and I do have a resource in my partner who he's very much a Boy Scout. He knows which trees are going to be good for fire, and I will say that too. We've talked about this before, Catherine, like especially, and I'm using my area of the world because this is where I grew up and this is what
Yeah.
we were taught as kids. So I'm going to encourage everybody, and maybe this is something people can leave in the comment sections from wherever you live in the world, these little tidbits of information. I think we said it before. If you live in the Southeast, if you live in Cherokee territory, we learned as kids, we see them all the time. The Cherokees had a way of bending trees, making pointer trees to point towards water. They're everywhere. You see them everywhere in the forest out here. So make sure your young people know that we were taught that as kids. So if you are out in the Appalachian Mountain, if all hell breaks loose, the United, the N word comes in and starts to try to take over, and you have to go into the Appalachian Mountains, do you know how to find fresh water? Well, the Native Americans left us these markers. Do you guys like remembering where's the North Star? Because this is, in my opinion, too, wherever you live, that's your secret weapon.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why the Americans won the American Revolution, we were taught as kids, is because the generations that were fighting, they were already a couple generations into people being born here. And so the patriots of that time in the American Revolution knew the Appalachian Mountains where the British didn't. So
Yeah.
they were able to do what they call guerrilla warfare because they could hide in certain areas. So that's your secret weapon. So take that information, learn from history, take wherever you live in the world. You know your territory. You know those. What is it that she says in The Sound of Music? These are my mountains. I grew up here. When she talks
Yeah.
about mountains, this is your territory. You grew up here. Make sure that that's refreshed in your mind so that you can take that power back and that your body is strong enough to find the fresh water. I know how to do that in the Southeast because of the thank you to the Cherokees for pointing it out with the trees,
And
So
basic, if you don't live somewhere with fresh water, because we know there's oil pollution, there's some really good stuff that I talk about a lot. It's on my Telegram channel, the thing that cannot be talked about on this platform at all. Why? Because for peanuts, you can carry it around with you and purify any water
yes, yeah,
anywhere. So, because it's about, you've hit the nail on the head, Bryce, it's about knowing your territory. And for me, this isn't about fear at all. It's about the opposite. Because look, if all of us are this prepared, the fear goes and the empowerment goes up here. And then
yeah.
we're not controllable. So it will never come to that. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I've just think there's something shifted in me. I think, we've had the same feeling for a while now. Is like, oh my goodness, I'm looking at all the stuff. I'm not launching much of it on social media, and I'm like, oh my goodness, they're still slowly boiling everyone. They've even got the awakened lot, and they're slowly boiling them. Because they've been very clever how they've done it in terms of wait, do nothing, do nothing. Look, I listened to another interview on my dog walk. It's one of the only ones I listened to about the Jeffrey Epstein with his brother, another Tucker one. Unbelievable. Look, Julian Assange, look at what's happening with that. If these people can be falsely convicted, we know there's loads of members of politicians in the US and the UK. Those are the two main ones I know about, but Canada would be up there and New Zealand as well, and Australia. but I don't know enough about the other countries. We've got politicians still in high positions that we know have committed war crimes. We know that have asked for certain people like Julian Assange to be assassinated. They're still free. What does that tell
Yes.
us all? Don't pretend that you're safe. These people are still, these psychopaths are still free. I watched a brilliant film. I must put it in the show notes. I must send it to you. It was about a UK whistleblower who blew the lid. She was working for Secret Services and she was brave enough to blow the lid because she saw the correspondence to show that the United Nations, I will say it once, were actually blackmailing the smaller countries to not go against the Iraq war. It was there in black and white, and she managed to get it to the newspapers, and it is a brilliant film. Again, I've got things, these brave whistleblowers, like you said at the end of our Kathy interview, we applaud you, but let's not let their work go in vain. Let's not let Julian
Absolutely.
Assange, Kathy, this other whistleblower later. I'll put the link to that video below as well, because everyone should watch that film. These brave people, we can't let it be in vain. And it's gone is the time for talking about it. We've got to take more action now, and we can all help each other out. Anyone who lives near me, come and have a plot in my garden. You can have it. I've got lots of space.
Oh, absolutely. If there's anybody that's near me and shit hits the fan, come find us. We'll navigate the Appalachian Mountains together. Because the
Yeah,
truth is, even though we do have land in Florida, we will probably go north. Is probably
yeah,
because that's probably the safest. So yeah, we'll work together to do this. And that's, and yeah, it's not fear. When I know in my head that what the plan, we've had many, my boyfriend and I've had many conversations about this since everything got crazy in 2020. We've had many conversations
yeah.
about this. We, even Atlanta was burned down once. Atlanta's a very complicated city to navigate. I would not put it past them to try to do that again. And so we know how to get out without using the major freeways, without using the major roads, because we're locals, right?
And
That's your
look what
power.
happened in Hawaii. They shut the roads, so you
Yeah.
need to make plans like that.
We know how to get out of the city. We know what to do to get out. We've already have it planned out. We have everything ready to go. And so, and we're so I would that, and it's not, yeah, Catherine, it's not to fear. Knowing that I know we can survive makes me be able to live my life better in this really weird period where we're not even sure what tomorrow is going to bring.
Yeah,
We're not even sure, and so I would just, to ask yourself, are you trying to get out of the plane? Are you sitting in the back of the plane being told it's fine when the plane is on fire by someone telling you the white hats are in control? It's okay. Don't worry. Relax. You'll get a med bed soon. These are serious questions you have to ask yourself. And I will say, a lot of what we see in the truther community is actually drama. It's tea, it's gossip,
oh,
it's not really lightning stuff. And I love that stuff. I'll admit, I was watching my catch up on my Beverly Hills Housewives when Catherine signed on for us to do this
yes,
episode.
because we
But I
know
know what it is.
yeah.
I see it for what it is. It's not going to help me. I'm not going to survive with it. It's a distraction. I know that's what it is. But I also have my ducks in a row over here. I'm not taking.
Careful who you listen to. If you're listening to something like you've just said, Bryce, if you're listening to someone for purely entertainment, go for it. If it uplifts you, if it makes you laugh, we all need that, because whereas now is a time to be serious, and Tucker makes
Yeah.
that really well, we also need to enjoy the here and now. And this is what we will probably talk about more next week, about how we find that balance. So please do let us know your tips on that. But how do you find that balance between taking this seriously and still really living your best life in the here and now? But you don't go to a sick doctor to ask how to get healthy. You don't go to a poor person to ask them how to get rich. Do not listen to people on the internet that have got no more intel than anyone else has, and listen to what they're doing to make life-changing decisions. It is ridiculous. So if you're doing it for entertainment purposes, which is, there's nothing wrong with that at all, go for it. But just make sure you're not making life-changing decisions from people that haven't demonstrated in any shape or form at all that they're any better at making those life decisions than we are. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I actually would like, Catherine, if you don't mind, 'cause I know this is on your channel this week. And we can maybe look at some of these comments next week. I've given some tips for the Southeast, but if people feel comfortable,
Yeah.
wherever you are in the world, let's say you live up in the Pacific Northwest, like what are some little things that you learned as a child? You know, I guess because we were like latchkey kids, we did play outside, we without our
Yeah.
parents, we were taught these little things, you know, like you same for snakes, red on black, you better step back, red on yellow could kill a fellow. That we have a lot of very vicious snakes down here. And so as a kid, we had to learn these rhymes. So when we were out playing in the woods, we would know what to do. So if you're from like the Pacific Northwest or the UK or Europe, or if you're in Australia, like what are some little things that you learned as a child, even if it's a little rhyme for your area? You don't have to put exactly where you live, but if
Yeah.
you put your region and say, hey, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, and we were taught as kids that, you know, whoever the Native Americans were up there, they would leave rocks in a certain formation. I don't know, I'm just making something up to point to shelter. If there was something that you learned as a kid that could really be handy for people now in case shit hits the fan, in case they cut our services, in case, share that in the comment section. You don't have to be very, I'm asking, be a little vague because it is the
Yeah.
comment section. Be like here is like if you lived in England, like I grew up, you could say I grew up in northern part of England, and this is the survival Boy Scout
Exactly.
tactics we learned as kids. Because we're also looking at the world being a lot smaller now than it was, and a lot of people are not living where they grew up because of work or marrying someone. So this information that you share, that's something so small that you learned as a kid could really help somebody in the future. So if you don't mind, Catherine, I would
I
love
think
to see
that's a brilliant idea. And you've just triggered my memory about something really important. So next week, back in January, I was part on Instagram of a natural health bundle, and the resources in there were just absolutely phenomenal. Well, I think it's launching next week. I'm pretty sure it is. There's a survival, homesteading, natural living bundle. I've just got sent the resources last week. I've got one in there. My one that I'm contributing is my natural health for dogs. It teaches you how to use all the natural remedies, all the herbs and everything for your dogs and other animals. The resources in that bundle are exactly what we're talking about. There's how to pickle things, grow things, build things, collect water. It's incredible. I was blown away when I saw it. So I'll tell you more about this, but this is why I'm so excited, Bryce. There's people out there that have got all this knowledge. They're sharing it so generously. So it is out there, despite the best efforts of, you know, the censors to not make it available. So team up with people. You don't need to know it all yourself. That's my main thing. You just need to know someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's do it. Let's, for our audience watching, and again, because we can talk about that next week as well, since it's launching next week and will be on my channel. I'm going to actually encourage our audience, if you don't mind, Catherine, to put, just because of the censorship and all that kind of stuff, put like Boy Scout tip or Girl
Yes.
Scout tip, so that the algorithm doesn't pick up on
Yes.
what you're saying. You know, just put, you know, for me, Girl Scout tip. In the Southeast, we have pointer trees for water, you know,
And
the
that's a
charity
really
has,
good
you know.
point, because people often say, why haven't you pointed me directly to a certain link? Because that's because if you put links even in the comments, unfortunately, that video will get shadow banned at best, taken
Yes.
down at worst. So all the rules and regulations that YouTube have in place for their policy apply to everything in the comment as well. And obviously, creators don't have time to monitor every single comment
Yeah.
as it goes up. And if one gets left up there, that can be disastrous. So, and then no
Yeah,
one
but
gets
be
to see
vague.
the video. So be
Yeah,
vague.
and that's, I know it's not fair to you guys. It's absolutely not fair to you guys because you're just in the comment section. But that's, we live, we're in on an unfair platform. So yeah, just put like Girl
Yeah,
Scout tip or Boy Scout tip, so that they, you know, a survival tip, you know, so that, you know, so it's like a camping tip, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, so because I would
brilliant.
love to see, and we can share that next week so that you can help somebody out in your area. Because if there's anybody that's moved to the Southeast that didn't grow up here for work, especially Atlanta, there's your tip. In the woods, you'll see these trees that are shaped in an L shape. Those are pointer trees. I don't know how the Native Americans did it, but they point you to, you follow it to water, to fresh water. That's
So
a tip.
go out and explore, find those things, share it with us. Put in the comments, please, what you'd like to discuss, if you'd like to see us discuss any other comments. And go watch that Tucker video. I think all of us need to. And let's just really make these changes now before we're completely boiled and
Let's
cooked.
get off the plane. Let's get off the plane.
Get off the plane now. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much, Bryce.
Bye, guys.
Bye.